My wife's dad used to say a man's value came from how thick his wallet was. He said that one Thanksgiving while we were all sitting at the dinner table, right in front of my wife and the rest of her family. Everybody laughed like he had said the smartest thing in the world. I just kept cutting my turkey and acted like it did not hit me hard, even though it felt like something sharp had gone straight through my chest. For 8 long years, I let that man believe I had nothing. For 8 years, I sat through every insult, every smug little remark, every look from people who thought they stood above me because they lived in bigger homes and drove newer cars. I kept telling myself it was not important. I told myself love would cover the difference. I told myself my wife would know my value, even if her family never did. Back then, I was wrong about more things than I wanted to admit. Then Christmas night came. That was the night my wife's father was finally going to learn how badly he had misjudged me. It happened in front of about 40 people at the most expensive restaurant in town. My name is Tyler Brooks. I am 34 years old, and for the last 10 years I have made my living restoring furniture. That is what I do. People bring me things that look ruined, and I bring them back. An old dresser with split drawers. A rocking chair passed down through generations. A dinner table that held a family together for 50 years. Folks hand me pieces of their past, and with my own 2 hands, I give those pieces a second life. It is honest work. It matters. But to my wife's family, the Whitmores, it meant I was nothing special. In their eyes, I was just a man with rough hands and not enough money. My wife, Kayla, and I met 9 years earlier at a county fair. Back then, she was not the woman she later became. She used to laugh easy. She did not care that I drove an old pickup or bought my clothes secondhand. She told me she liked my hands. She liked watching me work. She said she loved that I could take something broken and make it beautiful again. We got married 2 years later in a quiet courthouse ceremony. Her parents barely acted like it mattered. Her father, Grant, looked at me with the same disgust a man might give mud stuck to the bottom of his shoe. Her mother, Evelyn, wore a polite smile, but her eyes told the truth. She did not approve of me any more than he did. I believed things would improve with time. I thought once they saw how much I loved their daughter, they would soften. I thought once they got to know me, they would accept me. None of that happened. Grant Whitmore owned 4 car dealerships spread across the state. He was rich, loud, and full of himself. He made it his business to remind me at every family event that I was not the kind of man he wanted for his daughter. His wife, Evelyn, was not as loud, but she could cut just as deep. She hid her cruelty under a calm voice and fake kindness, always saying things in a way that sounded caring until you realized they were meant to put you down. Their son, Mason, was Kayla's younger brother. He was 29 years old and had never really done hard work a day in his life, but somehow he still found plenty of confidence when it came to making fun of me for earning my living with my hands. I took it for 8 years. I stayed quiet. I worked harder. I loved my wife and kept hoping she would stay beside me through all of it. But Kayla changed. At first, it happened so slowly, I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. Then it happened all at once. She stopped standing up for me. She stopped really seeing me. By the end of it, I was sharing a house with a woman who looked embarrassed every time I walked into a room. The only real family I ever had was my mother, and after she died when I was 25, the only one left was my uncle, Raymond. Uncle Raymond was a quiet man. He lived alone in a small cabin out in the woods, the kind of place where you could stand outside and hear nothing but wind through the trees. He wore flannel shirts, old work boots, and jeans that had seen better years. His truck was older and rougher than mine, and he never cared what anybody thought about him. When I turned 18, he gave me something strange. It was a black card with a dull finish, heavier than any regular card, with no logo, no bank name, no numbers on the front. The only thing on it was a name stamped in silver letters. Raymond Hale. He told me to keep it with me at all times. He said I was not to use it unless I truly needed to. Then he said something that stuck with me for 16 years. When the day comes and you use it, they will know exactly who you are. I asked him what that meant, but he would not explain. He only smiled like he knew something I did not. 3 years ago, Uncle Raymond died. I never used that card. I kept it in my wallet all that time, mostly because it was the last piece of him I still carried with me. A reminder of the one man who had always believed in me. Then came Christmas night. I was sitting at a long table inside a place called the Winthrop, surrounded by the Whitmores and a pile of their relatives and friends. 42 people in all. Every last one of them tied in one way or another to Grant's money, power, or influence. The whole room felt like it belonged to him. And every face around that table seemed to agree on one thing. I did not belong there. Then Kayla reached into her purse. She pulled out an envelope and slid it across the white tablecloth toward me. Inside were divorce papers. They had already been signed and dated 2 weeks earlier. Then Grant raised his glass and announced to the entire table that I would be out of the house by February. And just like that, the room exploded into applause. On Christmas night, 40 people clapped and smiled over the wreckage of my marriage like they were celebrating a grand achievement. I sat there for a second and felt it all at once. Every insult, every look, every moment I had been made to feel small and disposable. Then I opened my wallet. I took out the black card Uncle Raymond had handed me 16 years before, and I passed it to the waiter. The man looked down at the card, read the name, and all the color drained from his face. He bent toward me and quietly said 5 words that made the whole table go silent. That is the night I stopped being invisible. But for you to understand how I ended up there, holding divorce papers in one hand and that black card in the other, I need to go back a little. I grew up on the east side of town in a small house with my mother, Helen Brooks. She worked 2 jobs just to keep us afloat, and she raised me to believe that character mattered more than money. She taught me that a man should work hard, tell the truth, and never measure himself by what he owned. When she died, I was 25 years old, and for a while I thought losing her was going to break me for good. The person who kept me steady after that was Uncle Raymond. He did not talk much, but when he spoke, it meant something. He lived alone about an hour outside the city in that little cabin surrounded by trees and quiet. The man wore the same sort of clothes I still wear now: flannel shirts, work boots, worn jeans. He drove an old pickup that rattled and groaned every time he turned the key, but he never once seemed embarrassed by it. When I was young, I spent summers with him. Those were some of the best times of my life. He showed me how to use my hands the right way. He taught me how to sand wood until it felt smooth as glass. He taught me patience. He taught me how to look at something cracked, scratched, stained, or forgotten and still see value in it. That is where I learned to restore furniture. That trade came from him. On my 18th birthday, he placed that black card in my hand. I still remember how it felt. It was heavier than any card had a right to be, solid and unusual. No markings except his name in silver. Raymond Hale. I asked him what it was for. He looked me straight in the eye with that calm expression of his and said, "Keep this with you, Tyler. Do not use it unless you really need it. And when you do, they will know exactly who you are." I tried to get more out of him, but he would not say another word about it. He just gave that small, quiet smile and told me the answer would come when the time was right. So I carried it for 16 years. After he died 3 years ago, that card meant even more to me. It was the last thing he had given me, and I held on to it like a man hanging on to the final piece of home. Now let me tell you about Kayla. When I met her at the county fair 9 years earlier, I honestly thought I had stumbled into a miracle. She was beautiful, warm, easy to talk to, and when she laughed, everything around her seemed lighter. We stood near the Ferris wheel that first night and talked for hours. She told me she had never met anybody like me. She said she admired the fact that I worked with my hands. She said I felt real to her, honest in a way the men her parents pushed her toward never did. We fell hard and fast. Maybe too fast. 2 years later, we got married. I could not offer her wealth or status, but I gave her my word that I would love her, stand beside her, and support her no matter what came. I meant every bit of it. Her family never hid what they thought of me. The first time I met Grant, he asked what kind of work I did. I told him I restored antique furniture. He laughed right in my face and said, "So basically you are a handyman?" Before I could even answer, he had already turned away like I was not worth another second. Evelyn handled things differently. She smiled and said, "How sweet," but the way she said it made it sound like an insult. Later, she asked Kayla in private if she was really certain about marrying me. Kayla told me about it afterward, furious at her mother for saying it. She told me she did not care what her family thought. She said she loved me. That was the woman I married. That was the Kayla I believed in. But time and family pressure can wear a person down. Year after year, holiday after holiday, the same poison kept dripping. Grant never passed up a chance to say I was not a real provider. Evelyn would talk about how successful her friends' sons-in-law were, mentioning doctors, lawyers, and executives while looking at me with that fake sadness in her eyes. Mason called me the fixer, like it was some big joke everybody understood but me. And little by little, Kayla stopped fighting for me. At first, when her father started in on me at dinner, she would squeeze my hand under the table. Later, when we were alone, she would apologize and tell me she knew I was a better man than they gave me credit for. But then the hand on mine disappeared. Then the apologies stopped. Then one day I noticed she had started looking at me the same way her parents did. By the 6th year of our marriage, I felt like a visitor in my own house. We hardly talked anymore. She spent more time with her family than with me. Whenever I asked what had changed, she would say nothing was wrong and walk out of the room. I threw myself deeper into work. I accepted more jobs. I stayed late in the shop. I kept thinking that if I earned more money, if I proved myself in some bigger way, maybe things would turn around. They never did. The night before Christmas Eve, I heard Kayla talking on the phone with her mother. She did not know I was standing in the hallway. I heard her say, "I know, Mom. I should have listened to you from the start." I stood there and listened to every word. That night, I went to bed feeling like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, waiting for the final shove. The next evening, we drove to the Winthrop without saying much at all. Kayla wore a red dress and a pair of diamond earrings her father had bought her. I wore the only dress shirt I owned, the one I kept for moments when I needed to pretend I fit into her world. I had no idea that in less than 2 hours, my whole life was going to split wide open forever. The Winthrop was the kind of place that could make a man feel out of place the second he stepped inside, no matter how hard he had tried to dress for it. The ceilings stretched so high they barely looked real. Crystal chandeliers poured warm light over polished white marble floors. The waiters moved through the room in fitted suits, quiet and smooth, like they had been trained from birth to belong there. I knew right away that I did not fit in a place like that. I felt it the second Kayla and I walked through the doors. Her father had rented a private dining room for the family Christmas dinner. By the time we got there, the long table was already crowded with Whitmores and all the people who orbited around them. Aunts, uncles, cousins, in-laws, business friends, and people who seemed connected by money if not by blood. 42 people in all. At the head of the table sat Grant, looking like a man on a throne, taking in the room like it all belonged to him. He had on a dark blue suit that probably cost more than I earned in 3 months. Evelyn sat beside him in silk and pearls, smiling the way some people hold a knife, carefully and with purpose. Mason was slouched low in his chair with a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring at his phone with that bored, spoiled look of somebody who had never had to build anything for himself. Kayla walked ahead of me and sat down beside her mother. I took the chair next to Kayla and gave a few polite nods to the relatives who happened to glance my way. Most of them did not bother to greet me. I was used to that. Dinner started with the kind of talk I always heard around her family. Trips across Europe, new luxury cars, investment accounts. Somebody's son had gotten into Harvard. Somebody else's daughter was about to marry a man who managed hedge funds. The conversation moved around me like water flowing around a rock. I sat there quiet, cutting into my appetizer and tasting none of it. Then Grant decided it was my turn. "Tyler," he said, loud enough that everybody at the table could hear. "How is the furniture game? Bring any exciting old chairs back from the dead this year?" A few people laughed. I gave the smallest smile I could manage. "Work has been good. Busy enough." Grant leaned back, turning his wine glass in his hand. "Busy enough? That sounds like a polished way of saying you are barely hanging on." He took a sip, then kept going. "I was talking to Bradley Parker the other day. You remember Bradley, right, Kayla? The surgeon. He just bought a place up in the hills. Paid cash. For $1 million. Then he looked straight at me, smiling without a trace of kindness. "So what did you buy this year, Tyler? A new power sander?" The whole table burst out laughing. I felt heat rise into my face, but I kept myself still. I had learned years ago that if I reacted, they enjoyed it even more. Evelyn leaned forward with that careful, polished expression she always wore when she was about to say something cruel in a soft voice. "We do not mean to be hurtful, Tyler. We are simply concerned about Kayla's future. A woman needs stability. Surely you understand that." I understood her perfectly. She was telling me I was not enough. She was telling me I had never been enough. Mason lifted his drink toward me. "Give him some credit. At least he is reliable. Reliably broke." That got another round of laughter, even louder than the first. I tightened my grip on my fork and looked down at my plate. I kept telling myself the same thing I had told myself at every holiday gathering for years. Stay calm. Get through the night. Go home. Forget it happened. Then Kayla reached into her purse. She took out a white envelope and set it down in front of me. Her face did not show anything. She would not even look at me. I stared at the envelope. "What is this?" "Open it," she said. I picked it up and opened it. Inside was a packet of legal papers. I only had to read the first page to know what I was holding. A petition to end our marriage. My hands started to shake. I looked at Kayla, trying to find even a trace of the woman I had married. Some sign that this was not real. "You are divorcing me on Christmas?" She still did not meet my eyes. I made up my mind, Tyler. I should have done it a long time ago. My father was right about you. You are never going to become anything. It felt like getting hit in the chest with a hammer. For a second, I could not pull an air. I could not think clearly. Then Grant slapped his hand down on the table and grinned like a man celebrating a victory. About time my daughter came to her senses. He lifted his glass high. "Tyler, I will give you until February to get your stuff out of the house. After that, you can figure out life on the street. Homeless by February. Has a nice sound to it, does it not?" Then he turned toward the rest of the table like he was putting on a show. "Let us all raise a glass to Kayla's freedom." Glasses went up all around the room. 42 people lifted their drinks and applauded. The sound filled that private dining room and bounced off the walls while I sat there watching my marriage fall apart to the sound of cheers. My wife would not look at me. My father-in-law was laughing. People I barely knew were clapping because I was being humiliated in front of them. And something inside me changed. I thought about every insult I had swallowed whole. Every time I had kept quiet to avoid making things worse. Every night I had stared at the ceiling wondering why I could not seem to be enough for the woman I loved. Then I thought about Uncle Raymond. I thought about the black card in my wallet. I thought about the words he had said to me 16 years earlier. "When the day comes and you use it, they will know exactly who you are." For the first time in 8 years, I decided I was done being invisible. The applause died down, but my ears were still ringing. I looked around the table at all those faces. They had never seen me as a man. To them, I had always been a bad choice, an embarrassment, a mistake Kayla had made and finally corrected. They were already moving on, filling their glasses again, drifting back into conversations like nothing important had happened. As far as they were concerned, I was already gone. Kayla had leaned toward her mother and was whispering something, probably already planning the next step of her life back under her parents' roof. Mason was chuckling over something on his phone with one of his cousins. Grant was taking congratulations like he had just closed the biggest deal of his life. I folded the divorce papers neatly and slid them into my jacket pocket. My hands were not shaking anymore. That trembling had passed. In its place was something colder, cleaner, a kind of calm I had not felt in years. I was not angry anymore. I was not heartbroken in that moment either. I was finished. A waiter came down our side of the table just then. He was young, polished, and carried himself with that smooth professional manner you only see in places where the staff is trained to notice everything without seeming to notice anything. He began clearing away empty plates. I lifted a hand. "Excuse me." He turned to me at once. "Yes, sir. How may I help you?" I looked at him and said, "I would like to pay for the whole table. All of it." He blinked. For the first time, his perfect professional smile slipped a little. "Sir, this is a party of 42 guests. The total will be considerable. It will be several $1,000s at the very least." I nodded once. "I understand." Before the waiter could say anything else, Grant's voice cut through the room. "What exactly are you doing, Tyler?" I did not even look at him. I kept my eyes on the waiter. Then Grant laughed, loud and mocking, the same way he always did when he thought he had found a new way to make me small. Did everybody hear that? Tyler wants to cover dinner. The man who repairs old furniture thinks he is going to pay a bill bigger than his income for half a year. Laughter rolled around the table again. Mason nearly choked on his drink. "Maybe they will let him wash dishes in the kitchen," he said. "One plate at a time until he works it off." Evelyn gave a slow little shake of her head, wearing that fake sympathetic look. "Oh, Tyler, there is no need to humiliate yourself even more. We all understand your circumstances." Then Kayla finally looked at me. Her face showed a mix of annoyance and disbelief. "Tyler, stop. This is embarrassing. You are making this worse than it already is." I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my wallet. It was an old leather wallet, worn down at the corners, the same one I had carried for years. I opened it and found the black card right where it had always been, tucked behind my driver's license, waiting. I held it for a second before taking it out. It felt different in my hand that night, heavier somehow, like I was finally holding the answer to a question that had followed me my whole life. I handed it to the waiter. Use this. He took the card automatically, the way a man in his job probably handled hundreds of cards every night without thinking much about them. He gave it a quick glance. Then he froze. His eyes widened. The color drained straight out of his face. He looked down at the card again, then at me, then back at the card. His lips parted, but he did not say anything at first. I looked at him. Is something wrong? He swallowed hard. Sir, please excuse me for one moment. I need to speak with the general manager. Then he turned and walked away fast, disappearing through a door marked private at the far end of the room. Grant let out a short, satisfied laugh. Well, there it is. Card is probably declined. Or maybe it expired years ago. Tell me, Tyler, do you even have a credit line? Or did the bank throw you out the front door? I did not answer him. I just sat there with my hands folded on the table and waited. 2 minutes passed. People around the table had gone back to talking, but now and then I caught someone glancing over at me, curious to see what kind of mess this would turn into. Then the door opened. The waiter came back first, and this time there was a new tension in the way he moved, a kind of urgency. Right behind him walked an older man in a charcoal suit, so sharp it looked custom-made. He carried himself like somebody used to being obeyed. But what caught me off guard was the look on his face. Respect. That was not something I was used to seeing directed at me in that room. The man's name tag read Samuel Mercer, General Manager. He walked straight over to my seat and stopped in front of me. Then he held out his hand. Mr. Brooks. I stood up and shook it. Yes, that is me. His tone was formal, but there was real warmth in it. Sir, I owe you an apology. We had no idea you would be joining us tonight. If we had known, your arrival would have been handled very differently. Grant leaned forward, and for the first time that evening, the smug look on his face slipped. What is this supposed to mean? Who exactly do you think you are talking to? Mr. Mercer did not so much as glance in his direction. He kept his eyes on me. Mr. Brooks, we contacted the estate attorneys, and they confirmed everything. Your uncle's instructions were extremely clear. The instant you presented that card, we were to begin every procedure immediately. My heart was beating hard enough that I could feel it in my throat, but I kept my voice even. What procedures? Mr. Mercer leaned in slightly. By then the whole room had gone quiet. Every person at that table was watching us. He spoke in a low voice, but the silence in that room was so deep that every word landed clear. Sir, your uncle founded this establishment. He was the sole owner. When he passed away 3 years ago, full ownership transferred to you. He paused and looked me right in the eyes. Mr. Brooks, this restaurant belongs to you. What came after that was not ordinary silence. It was the kind of silence that feels heavy in the air, like the whole room had forgotten how to breathe. It was not just quiet after that. It was the kind of silence that takes over when every person in the room realizes the ground under them is not what they thought it was. It felt like the air itself had locked up. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. For a second, it seemed like even breathing had stopped. I watched the shock spread around the table one face at a time. Grant had his champagne glass halfway to his mouth when he froze. His jaw had gone slack. He looked caught somewhere between confusion and disbelief, like his brain was refusing to accept what he had just heard. Evelyn's perfect expression finally broke. Her eyes jumped from me to Mr. Mercer and back again, like she was waiting for somebody to laugh and say it had all been a misunderstanding. Mason looked like he had just been hit across the face. His phone slipped right out of his hand and landed on the table with a hard clatter. And Kayla, the woman who had slid divorce papers in front of me 10 minutes earlier, stared at me like I was a complete stranger. Mr. Mercer kept speaking, calm and professional, either unaware of the damage his words were doing or too focused to care. Mr. Brooks, your uncle Raymond Hale founded Hale Hospitality 42 years ago. What began as a single restaurant grew into one of the most respected hospitality groups in the country. The Winthrop is the flagship property, but the company also includes 37 restaurants and 12 luxury hotels across the United States. Your uncle stepped away from public life many years ago. He preferred privacy, but he kept full ownership of the business until his death. I finally found my voice. I did not know any of that. Mr. Mercer gave a small nod. That was intentional, sir. Your uncle left very specific instructions with the estate attorneys. He wanted you to live your life without the weight of inherited wealth until the day you were ready. The black card was the trigger. He said that when you chose to use it, that would mean you were ready to claim what he left you. Grant slammed his hand down on the table so hard the silverware jumped. This is ridiculous. It has to be some kind of stunt. Tyler is nobody. He restores furniture in a rented shop. There is no world where he owns anything like this. Mr. Mercer finally turned his head toward Grant. His voice stayed polite, but it had gone cold. Sir, I can assure you that our legal team has verified Mr. Brooks's identity and every part of the estate documentation. All records are fully authenticated. Mr. Tyler Brooks is the sole owner of Hale Hospitality Group and every business held under it. Then he paused. Based on this morning's valuation, his net worth exceeds $400 million. That number landed in the room like an explosion. $400 million. I watched every face around that table change. Family members who had not even bothered to acknowledge me when I sat down were now staring at me wide-eyed. Cousins who had laughed at Mason's jokes looked sick. Aunts and uncles who had spent years talking down about me sat frozen, not saying a word. Evelyn put a hand to her chest like she might faint. Mason grabbed his drink and emptied it in one swallow. Then Kayla spoke. Her voice came out thin and shaky. Tyler, why did you never tell me? All this time, why did you keep it from me? I looked at her. Really looked at her. Maybe for the first time in years, I saw her clearly. I saw the woman who had handed me divorce papers without even a trace of regret. I saw the woman who had stood by while her family took me apart piece by piece. I saw the woman who had looked me in the eye and told me I would never become anything. I did not know, Kayla, I said quietly. But let me ask you something. Would it have mattered? She did not answer. You gave me those papers because you believed I had nothing. Your family spent 8 years treating me like I was dirt under their feet. None of you ever actually saw me. You only saw what I did not have. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I stood up from my chair. I loved you, I said. I would have given you everything I had. It was not much, but it was real. I would have worked every single day of my life to build a good life with you. But you chose to walk away the moment you thought I had nothing left to offer. That tells me all I need to know about what this marriage meant to you. Then I turned to Grant. His face had gone pale under the red. There was sweat at his temples now. A few minutes earlier he had looked like a king. Now he looked like a man who had suddenly discovered he was standing on thin ice. You said I would be homeless by February, I told him. That is interesting, Grant, because according to the records your manager's team just confirmed, Hale Properties holds the lease on the building where your dealership headquarters operates. His jaw locked tight. I went on. That means I am your landlord. He still said nothing. So let me be clear, I said. You will be out of that building by February. Consider it a farewell gift from the nobody who repairs old furniture. Then I picked up my coat from the back of my chair and put it on. I looked at Mr. Mercer. Please send tonight's bill to my office. Dinner is on me. Let it be my final gift to the Whitmore family. Something to remind them of the man they decided was worthless. Then I turned and started walking toward the door. Behind me, I heard Kayla call my name. I heard a chair scrape across the floor as she stood up. I felt her hand brush at my arm, trying to stop me. I kept moving. When I reached the door, I stopped and turned around one last time. 42 faces were staring at me. Nobody had anything to say. My voice came out steady. My uncle taught me something a long time ago. A man's worth is not measured by his wallet. It is measured by how he treats people when he thinks nobody important is watching. I let that sit in the room for a second. Tonight, I watched all of you. Now I know exactly what each of you is worth. Then I walked out. Outside, the December air hit me clean and cold. Snow was falling in a light, steady drift, covering the city in white. The night felt sharp and quiet and honest. For the first time in 8 years, I could breathe. I did not look back. The days after that Christmas dinner were the quietest days I had known in a long time. I drove back to the house Kayla and I had shared, packed one suitcase, and left before she came home. I did not want a scene. I did not want one more argument. I did not want apologies, explanations, or tears. I wanted that part of my life closed. The divorce moved through faster than I expected. At first, Kayla's lawyers tried to fight over it. They claimed she had not known about the full extent of my assets and argued that she should be entitled to part of the estate. But that is the funny thing about irony. Years earlier, Grant had insisted on a prenuptial agreement. He wanted to make sure I could never touch the Whitmore family money. That agreement turned out to work perfectly against them. Kayla had signed away any right to assets acquired before the marriage or held outside it. In the end, she got exactly what she had planned to leave me with. Nothing. Through people who knew people, I later heard that Grant lost the lease on his dealership headquarters 3 months after that dinner. I did not renew it. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I was trying to crush him. I simply had no reason to keep doing business with a man who had spent nearly a decade trying to tear me down. He moved the operation to a smaller property out near the edge of town. Within a year, 2 of his 4 dealership locations had shut down for good. The same man who used to make fun of me for repairing broken furniture was now struggling to hold his own business together. Evelyn sent me a letter around 6 months after the divorce was final. It was 3 pages long. It was full of apologies, excuses, and careful explanations. She said she wanted us to meet for coffee and start over. She claimed she had always liked me and that Grant's behavior had never truly reflected her own feelings. I read the letter once. Then I folded it up, dropped it in the trash, and never thought about it again. Some things are not meant to be repaired. Mason reached out too. He sent me a friendly message on social media, suddenly acting like we had always had a good relationship. He said he had a few business ideas and thought maybe we should meet up so I could hear him out and possibly help him get started. I blocked him without replying. I had spent 8 years watching him mock me while bringing nothing of value into anybody's life. I was not going to bankroll his laziness. Kayla called me once on a Tuesday night, about 4 months after everything happened. Her voice sounded soft and cracked. Nothing like the cold voice she had used when she pushed those papers across the table. She told me she had made the worst mistake of her life. She said she had not understood what she had when she had it. She said she still loved me and wanted to know whether there was any chance we could start over. I let her say everything she needed to say. Then I told her the truth. You already had everything, Kayla. You had a husband who loved you and would have done anything for you. That was worth more than money ever will be. But you could not see it. And I cannot forget the way you looked at me when you thought I had nothing. Then I ended the call. I never spoke to her again. When I took over Hale Hospitality, I did not run it the way people expected. I did not lock myself in some top-floor office and shout orders at executives. I went to the restaurants in person. I walked through the hotels. I learned the names of the people who worked there, from chefs to housekeepers to valets to dishwashers. I remembered birthdays. I asked about their kids, their parents, their lives. I paid attention. I listened. I tried to become the kind of owner Uncle Raymond would have respected. And on weekends, I still restored furniture. I kept my workshop. I still took on projects when I had time. I needed that. It kept me steady. It reminded me who I had been before the money, before the lawyers, before the restaurant, before that Christmas night blew my old life apart. About a year after that dinner, I was in the workshop sanding down an old oak table when I found something I had not expected. There was a hidden drawer in the back, stuck shut from years of neglect. I worked it open and found one envelope inside, yellowed with age. It was a letter from Uncle Raymond. My hands shook when I opened it. I read every word slowly. Tyler, if you are reading this, then you finally used the card. I never told you about the money because I wanted you to become a good man without leaning on it. Anybody can look generous when life has already handed him everything. The real test is how a man treats people when he has little to give but himself. You pass that test every day. I watched you work hard. I watched you stay humble. I watched you love people without attaching conditions to it. That is why I left everything to you. Not because you needed it, but because you earned it. Use it well. Stay a good man. And remember this. The people who stay beside you when you have nothing are the only people worth keeping when you have everything. I love you, son. Uncle Raymond. I sat there in my workshop for a long time with that letter in my hands. For 8 years, I had let other people convince me I had no value. I believed them because I had started thinking worth came from money, titles, and approval from people who had never really cared enough to know me. But Uncle Raymond had understood something I had not. A man's worth is in his character. It is in whether he shows up. It is in whether he keeps working. It is in whether he treats people with respect, even when nobody is looking and even when life is not being kind to him. That Christmas dinner changed everything for me. Not because I found out I was rich. Because I finally understood that the people who mocked me were the ones who were truly poor. They had money. They had status. They had expensive clothes and polished manners and all the things people use to impress each other. But they had no loyalty, no integrity, no real love. So if you are out there feeling unseen, feeling like you are not enough, feeling like people have already decided your value before they ever learned your name, listen to me. Your worth does not come from the people who underestimate you. Keep going. Stay true to yourself. Your time will come. And when it does, make sure you are still the kind of person who deserves it.